It's so hard to tell without the monitor what's happening.
I don't even know. But we're live.
We are live.
I smell a rat.
Are we visible? Are we visible?
Are we visible? We're visible. Yeah.
Let's get some comments. I feel like that if we could get like a hello from somebody to confirm that this is happening. I can't even get it pulled up on my phone yet. There he is. Are we at a distance? Are we back on that camera?
We're on that camera.
Okay.
I smell a rat, and it's not just Jet.
Ooh.
We're talking about the sermon from yesterday.
All right. Done. I'm done. I'm ready.
Wow.
Let's go live.
We're live. We're live right now. Oh, snap. It's happening.
You know what's funny? I hadn't thought of that. I told my brother, talking about that barn, I told my brother, like, it feels like a dream that happened.
Really?
Like, I know that it was real, and I remember being there, but it was so long ago. Oh, it's happening. It's happening. Yes. Yeah, it's like, you're like, I know that happened. I know it's real, but it just seems like a lifetime ago. It feels like, you ever remember like a memory from a childhood?
Oh, yeah.
And you know, but then you're like, what led to that?
Right.
That was, and I called him. I was hoping he would have this, like, here was the setup, here's the story, because it was such, like, it went right along with what we were going to talk about. And I was so hopeful. And then he's like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I was like 16.
Wasn't it said,
maybe I was 12.
Wasn't it said in Wesley, I think John is the one that says this, so maybe you know, but you only remember something once. Everything after that is a memory of a memory.
Yeah. No, I can understand that.
But yeah.
Like on me?
It's
we're live
throwing
right
me
now.
off. It's throwing me off because I can't tell which camera.
Yeah. So everyone, Levi is back on the control board.
Welcome back, Levi.
You want to show the back of your head real fast?
I'm showing it.
Is it good? Is it looking good?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
and so I don't have my computer here. He has it, so I have no idea what's going on. So it might be going terribly. But
I'm gonna say, with no monitor, we're gonna have to like lean more heavily, I think, on comments tonight, because I don't want to explain to somebody something that they don't have, questions they don't have.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So now is your time.
Great?
We were talking about it today, actually, about how this sermon is kind of like the I mean, it is the teaching, the lecture.
Right.
And then like the Monday night podcasts are for tutoring, if you will, or
it seems like
hours.
that the sermon on Sunday morning kind of rolls this ball off of the hill, and it has to roll through the Monday night podcast, the Q&A. It goes through women's Bible study, through men's Bible study. And so by the time that like we're done on Thursday, whatever was talked about on Sunday should be sort of like broken apart and kind of looked at from all angles. And if somebody wants the opportunity to interact or ask questions or whatever, it's a good deal.
Yeah. Because for me, when I'm like tuned in, listening to a sermon or a teaching of any kind, I mean, I usually have questions, and sometimes it's hard to remember a question you had.
Right.
And so that's why, I just take notes. But then,
if people would comment a question, I think we could, like, I would love, because I'm the same way. In the moment, I might have a question and I'll forget it.
Right.
If I just would like a collection, something for us to kind of sort of
unpack. Right.
So whether it's live on Monday nights or whether that they're commenting or emailing or whatever, it'd be cool to see.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that'd be great. And I mean, I know Wesley, for, I think it was the first service or one of them, he said he was going to take notes and think about like an opposite opinion. Somebody who's trying to, pick apart the sermon and what kind of questions that would. I can't remember. Did you actually think of anything? Not really.
Wesley's going to have to be careful because that's how preachers happen. That you're talking about something from both perspectives. You're trying to think, like, because I do that. Like I've been to I grew up in church, but you've been to so many services where it's like, that the opposing opinion was never considered. And you're like, man, imagine how much deeper you could have gone with that thought if you would have just stopped and thought, if somebody didn't believe this way, how would you explain it to them?
Right.
Otherwise it's kind of grandstanding and everybody's like, yeah, hurrah, let's go. Right. Acts 12, I will say this. Acts 12 is one of the most interesting full circle chapters. It's an easy one to preach on. And whether you're a believer or you're not, what Acts 12 did for me is it explains opposing views or not. It's at least easy to understand. It's not one of those things that you have to like scratch your head. It's not a parable where you leave going, man, I wonder what that meant. Okay, I think I've got some stuff. I don't remember the question as much as I do the answers. Jordan's, yeah, perfect. I would sign a petition to make Wesley a preacher. Yep. Need a huge remodel. Where do I start? Thoughts. Your thoughts. That's where it all starts. Actually, that's probably where it starts and ends, Gladys, is I don't think people realize how much of their time is spent during a day mentally dwelling on something.
Right.
You could be working on something, but mentally you're in a different place. And what I have started to understand, I think July we're going to like your dreams. What are your dreams? What are your goals? I don't think God created us to just destroy us and never rebuild us back, right? But before we can start building back into the dream concept of like, what is your goals? Where do you want to go? We're here in June and we're talking about thoughts. And it seems like what I've realized is I don't spend a lot of time thinking about who God is, the fact that God is, where he wants to take us. I don't think about the authority of the word, his opinion over mine, like he's got, remember that song? Do you ever seen it? I can't remember if you grew up in these classes or not. Did you ever hear the song? He's got the whole world in his hands.
Oh yeah. He's got the whole world in his hands. He got the whole wide world.
Where's Braden been, by the way?
Braden, didn't he move to Powell Butte?
Says hello from
just,
Powell Butte.
Yeah, somebody just told me. Okay, well, that's a good indication. But
is he
somebody
in
just
his
told
home
me.
or not? There for a while,
Braden,
he was
are
doing
you-
some fun.
Did you move to Powell Butte, Braden?
Like transitional stuff. Anyway, he's got the whole world in his hands, right? Gladys, back to your where do I start? It absolutely with, am I thinking of this in terms of God's got it under control, or am I thinking this in terms of I'm going to have to handle this and hope God doesn't mess up or like abandon me? Just moved to Powell Butte. Great. Hey, put your address on here. No,
Yeah, let's go visit. Everybody bring him some food.
Load up.
So that kind of goes along with a thought that I've been having of confidence in God, because so often, you'd pray or I'd pray for something and it would be like, okay, I prayed, now I have to do it. Versus, like I prayed, if, Lord, give me a job or a house or something. And then it's like, and then I immediately go to, okay, now how can I scheme to make it happen versus, which is, that's kind of a bad example, but having the confidence of like, the Lord knows me and he knows what's best. And so if it does happen, if it doesn't happen, it's in his hands, So that's like the way of thinking.
Well, and I think somewhere in the middle ground, because as a parent, one of the things I try to really install in my children is you've got to participate in your life. You can't just sit on the couch and play video games and assume that someday this amazing life is going to fall into your lap.
Right.
Life is this combination of like vision and work and dreaming and God's intervention, and there is this balance. I don't want my kids to be people who don't participate in their own life for their own good. I want them to be the ones that are working so hard that you kind of, this is an interesting analogy, but when they're trying to teach people to spot counterfeit money, the way that they do that is not by showing them all the potential counterfeits. They just show them the real thing over and over and over and over and over again, so that anything that's a variation from that, right? And so, like, to your point, I want to find a balance that says I want to work as though it depends on my effort, but I want to live with the amount of faith that says, God, if it varies somewhere in here, give me the peace and the grace to know that you're taking this somewhere that I may not even see.
Right.
There's a Timothy Keller sermon that said, how could we expect to even know what to ask? If God is God and we're not, how would we even know what to ask? So instead of basing so much of our dreams on what we're asking God for, basing so much of our life on who we believe God to be, like settling it in our minds who God is, and then just going after it. I want to reestablish in my own life. I want to reestablish passion and purpose, and I want to get up in the morning and I want to attack the day. And I think God has had me in a little bit of a season of like, hey, just take a deep breath. Like, instead of carrying the results on my shoulders, set everything down so that when you get back to work there, you're not surrendering the grace in that process.
Right.
Does that make sense?
No, totally.
Funny song, Joy to the World, written by Hoyt Axton. Spent Christmas with them. Glad to work as a big Christian. Awesome. There's a guy that lives in Brasada that's like a famous Christian songwriter.
Wow. Jump on
I was
here,
hoping
guy.
you guys were gonna. I was hoping you guys were gonna be like, oh yeah, that's so.
that guy.
I was trying to trigger conversation. Not gonna happen. Okay. Following up and instilling in kids, they need to put in the effort. Yeah, and I think I needed to hear exactly this. I think that's the thing is like we are responsible for our effort.
Yeah.
We are. I
Right.
mean, there is a role that we play in being willing to work. And I hate to reference this guy because I give him so much crap, but Joel Osteen one time told a story about a guy climbing a mountain, and he comes upon this boulder and he can't move it. And so God tells him to push on it. Have you heard this? We've used this analogy. Tells him push on it. And he goes, well, I can't move the boulder. He goes, just push. So he's pushing and pushing and pushing. He's exhausted. He's sitting there and God says, keep working on it till I get back. So the guy's like, I'm never going to move this boulder. So he's working, he's effort and push. One day a tornado comes, a storm comes, and it blows a path around this boulder, and the boulder never moves. And God shows back up, and the guy's like, what was that? Like, I put so much effort into trying to move this boulder, and it never moved, and you told me to, and I did it, and I was obedient. And you're like, what was that? And God said, it was preparation for what's ahead. Look at your back and your arms and your legs, and the conditioning that you needed. You weren't prepared. It was going to be failure up there that now it'll be success, and the conditioning was the boulder, right? And so I want to be able to get up and attack whatever God's got for me that day, and my kids and my marriage. I want a life that my dreams, my goals are, I want a life that allows me to be a good leader, that allows me to be a good husband, a good dad, a good guy, like have my friends and also my work. And I would love a life that allows me to get up and work on that every day.
Right.
Reserving the results that say, but God, in the midst of that, don't let me get so results oriented. You almost gotta surrender the results.
Mm-hmm.
You go, I'm going to do what you've called me to do. And that's I feel like I'm over talking it, but
well, I mean that's exactly what I meant. And I have I'm a person I think that kind of falls into extremes where it's simpler for me, like life is simpler for me. So if it's like I need to get something done, it's very easy for me to just fall into almost putting too much thought or too much effort into it, where it kind of compromises other aspects of my life. And the same thing where, if I let myself just do nothing, I can, it's harder for me to get the ball rolling. And so, I guess that's exactly what I meant with, if you can go to bed every day satisfied thinking I worked hard and my heart's in the right place and all that, then effort or thought dwelling on, the results, can be resistance towards your ultimate goal.
I was thinking about that today. Like if we talked about remodel, and when there's a remodel, it means that walls get taken out and like the guts of a structure are taken out and replaced and moved around. Redecorating is when you just make it look better.
Right.
And so I was thinking about that today. I want to be able to identify when a wall moves and not just call that failure, because in my life, when God takes a wall out, a lot of times he takes it out in the form of failure or the death of something that I've been trying for or working towards. Mm-hmm. And even though God's moving, it feels to me like I messed something up. Like when I'm under this remodel process that I feel like that God's always got me in, sometimes I look up and I go, I failed at that. And God's going, I get to decide failure or success. I'm the one. Like God, if God is the creator and I'm the creation, and I can honestly say that I'm putting in the work that I feel like he's called me to put in, then it's not failure, it's process. And that to me, I think that's maybe what I didn't even communicate yesterday was you're going to go through seasons. If you can honestly look yourself in the face and go, I know that I'm making an effort. I know that I'm trying. If God brings something to your attention and goes, hey, stop doing that. Stop doing it. Or he goes, hey, move. Like God's got this way of letting you know what his plans are, what he wants. If it's specific, if it's general, just keep doing what you're doing, you know? And so I think that to me was like, everybody wants a remodel until the first wall goes down and then they
freak out.
Yeah. They change. They're like, no, I got to go back to fishing again. Like Peter. And so I think in your mind, what is an example? Cause that was mine of like failure. There are going to be times, Weatherford, Texas, we had plans on what we thought it would produce and it didn't produce those at all, but it produced everything pretty much that we've done since 2016 has been a direct pivot from why Weatherford didn't do what we thought it was going to do. We directly pivoted into everything that we're doing now. Mm-hmm. So I look back and go, God was remodeling Shiloh in that process. He was remodeling my idea of being a pastor. He was remodeling what it meant for me to be a leader, because I've always thought that the church was supposed to be a reflection of my vision for the church. Right. And it was during that period where I realized, like, hey, worship is not going to be mine and mine alone to shape. Culture is not going to be mine and mine alone to shape. I mean, there's going to be so many elements that we transition from me to we that I learned during that process of a remodel. Right. But it didn't feel like a remodel at the time. It felt like failure. It felt like that I had something and it didn't work. Yeah, no, that is a huge element in my life. When I ended high school, it was when you say ended high school, graduated high school. I was just going to clarify. Yeah, sorry. Usually when I stopped going to high school.
when I ran away from home.
We're in Craig County. There
yes,
are people
good
in
point.
high school.
When I graduated high school, I just was staring at a brick wall where I didn't know where to go, up, down, around, under, anything. I mean, my buddies, Wesley included, all had ideas. They're going to college, going to be engineers, all this different stuff. And I thought, I actually have no idea. And I knew that the school system kind of killed me in the sense of just, I wasn't me when I was doing that.
Right.
It wasn't really for me. But so there was just a period of my life where I had nothing. I had no direction. And so, I'm a person that is very much, I think, in the mindset of if an angel came down and said, do this thing, I would be absolutely and go do it. But it was just nothing.
Right.
And, I went to mechanics school for a semester, and that wasn't it either, because that was all about money.
You went for a full
people.
semester?
Uh-huh.
Wow.
And learned basically nothing, because it was only about money. it was about like, this is how to work on cars to make the most money. And I was like, I don't want to make
you
money.
were a mechanic before you got there.
Right. So, well, I mean, yeah.
Kind of like the business school of mechanics.
I guess. Yeah. I mean, anyway. So then stopped doing that. And because I was like, you know what? I really, really, really enjoy, video and technology and photos and doing all this stuff. And so there was this time where I was like, all right, I'm just going to pursue what I think I'm supposed to pursue. And then in that, I mean, you were a key player in that. So many different times I was like, we should do this, we should do that, build a huge studio with a bunch of people and all that. And thinking back to it now, I'm like, man, if the Lord gave me that at that time, I mean, I was under the impression, I was like, if this doesn't work in a year, 4 years ago, if this doesn't work in a year where I'm like satisfied, then I'm joining the military, or I'm doing this, and that. And it just deadline after deadline after deadline that I was like giving to the Lord, which is not how that works.
Remodeling.
Yeah. It was just, I was like, okay, now I'm faced with that deadline of, do I do that or this or stay? And anyway, and then now thinking back at it now, I'm thinking, I am so happy and so thankful that I wasn't in the ultimate control, because I mean, who knows where I'd be? I'd probably be stressed out and dead.
I think about horses, and I don't know if this is going to be too vague. Hopefully there's enough horse people out here to understand what I'm saying. Greg, I'm answering your question. We say, how many remodels can you go through? I think about a horse, and the base foundation for a horse to be useful is that he's broke. And the base foundation for him to be broke is that he is surrendered. And the base foundation for him to be surrendered is he has to give up on his ideas. Mm. So for a horse to be useful, before he can become good at what he's going to become later, 5 steps before that is, at some point I have to give up on my ideas. That's why the horse trainers at home, we lived near Weatherford, and a bunch of cutting horse people, and they would tie horses up. They wouldn't ride them. They just tie them up when they're young, just tie them to a tree or tie them to a fence or something for periods of time. And they say that they want that horse to be on my time, not his own time. He needs to spend large portions of his day on my time instead of his time. And now I think in my life, if there are times where God has maybe had me at a job that didn't seem super meaningful, but I was on his time instead of my own time, what I'm learning how to do is be broke. How many times do you go through a remodel? Well, Paul says daily. Paul says every day I go through some. And I think the quicker we learn to be broken, just roadkill on the road to God, of hey, this is what I think I'm going to do, and I'm going to go after it. But in a moment's notice, you give me the cue, I'll stop and back away. That, to me, you never stop getting broken. It just stops hurting. Because in the beginning, it hurts so bad because you're told what your goals are really valuable, and the way that you see things as a 16-year-old matters. They don't. The quicker you get over that, then you're the quicker you can get to the actual job, the actual purpose. You think about, for you, when you guys showed up here, this wouldn't have even made sense. It would have been cool. You would have probably actually been more excited in the moment then than now, because you look at it now, it looks like work. Nothing is ever as exciting the second time as it is the first time. That first experience with anything cool, then it turns into work. And so it doesn't matter what we do, that remodeling, for me, that remodeling comes in the form of a daily surrender. Because for me to hear God's voice, sometimes his voice is telling me to do something that I couldn't possibly understand. Right. And the more I resist that, the further I'm getting away from my purpose in life.
Right. And like you said, when the first wall goes down, it's scary.
Oh,
and,
it feels
and
like
you pull
death.
out.
Well, it feels like death because you're like, it didn't work.
Right.
That's like the measurement of like, it didn't work.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking back to, because for a young kid, what's the first thing you ask a young kid straight out of high school?
What do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah. Or are you going to college, or what are you doing now, and all this stuff. And so every single interaction with every single person I faced with, I was like, do I lie? Do I tell them I am doing something, or do I truly say like, I have no idea and I'm trying to pursue what I feel like God is giving me in my life? I mean, and so, and that was just like every day I felt like failure and failure, because I wasn't like, oh, I'm going to become a doctor for rats. I don't know.
Yeah.
But again, now I'm like, now I feel more confident than I feel like I would have been if I just did the classic thing, because if somebody asked me like, what are you doing today? Or, how are you today? I'm like, I'm doing pretty good. And I'm just, I'm good.
That to me, I don't know how to get there because I'm not very good at it. Here are my analogies again. I've got 2 dogs. One that's like this self-starter, and if you don't watch him, he's gone. Like, he wants to be working. He's always wanting to work. And so you got to like, stop, just turn off. He doesn't have an off button. No, that's Gus. And Gus is 6. He's been around forever. He kind of knows the deal. If we go out to do something, he already knows before. He's really smart. Before we ever get out there, he kind of has an idea. Rip, he's the probably the best dog I'll ever own. But he's fine not doing anything. Like, he'll sit right by you. Like, he'll just hang out. Like, you look down, he's just like, he gets more freedom even than Gus does, because Gus is restricted by his unwillingness to turn off. I can't just turn him loose, because if I turn him loose, he's going to be going and getting into things that I don't want him to be into. Because of Rip's willingness to kind of pivot off me, then that's what I want my heart to feel like. Is like, God, I'm off today. Okay. I don't do that very well. Like, when I have a day off, I'm like panicking. I'm like, what did I do wrong? This isn't going well, worrying. Even though like maybe I'm not outwardly tearing stuff up, internally it just isn't in my guts. I'm like, oh, what's going on? I hate feeling like there's a party going on next door and I'm stuck at home with nothing to do.
Yeah. Well, and I feel exactly like
Beth is going to get me to swear right here on live TV.
What about donut?
What about donut?
Stupid donut. No, I feel that because it's weird when there's a day off. Recently it's been better, but I'm like the same thing. It's hard for me just to sit still unless I have, and this is, getting married, this has helped it a lot. I think that's what it is. It's because if I need another person to like tell me, yeah, man, just chill for the day. Because if it's just me and my own thoughts, I'm like, I'll sit down to watch a movie or do anything, and I'm like, I could be doing this, I could be doing this, I could be doing this. And then I think, having a person around me constantly now helps, because I'm like kind of constantly gauging that of like, what should we do? Is it work time? Is it chill time? And so that's helped a lot. But
for the first time in my life, I have actually considered, not considered like as a plan. I mean, I have processed the advantage of living in a city. I'm not moving to a city. That's not what I'm saying. I would love to live within walking distance of something that was happening every day. Yeah. Like, I would love to be able to walk out my door, walk down the street, and see what's up that day. I don't miss the bar scene from being single. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
But I grew up in the coolest city ever. And any night of the week, if you wanted to be gone, you could go find something that was going on and feel like you were plugged in. I also remember that it was a huge distraction from the remodel. I think I'm just now thinking it didn't get into the sermon, but it makes sense to me now that like sometimes the remodel has to have your attention. And if you've got the outlet to go be distracted, I think sometimes we get halfway into a process and we don't finish it and we don't see it through and we never see the completed project. We don't see it finished. And it just feels like we're sort of this weird religious figure where we're aware of the rules, but we're not better for them. Right. We're just sort of stuck in the middle. And I think I have to be aware of that. Is sometimes I just don't need an outlet. Sometimes I need to be pinned down to whatever God's doing so that I don't have the opportunity to walk away from it. Yeah.
I mean, I know, I was talking with a friend and we were saying, it's so weird how some people have a day for everything, it's bachelor night, and let's have everybody over, to watch The Bachelor or whatever,
Right.
or like it's game
routine.
night, it's game, it's
Some
this,
sort of
this,
routine,
this,
yeah.
where it's just there's always a party, there's always something going on, and we were like, that's so weird. Why would you do that? And in my thinking, I'm kind of like, because they don't want to be silent with themselves. They don't want the remodel, because as soon as they stop moving and stop distracting themselves constantly, it's just bombarded with, walls coming down, and they just try to stop that as best they can,
Wesley says, is not being able to be still an indication of needing a remodel? If being still is the ground shaking and that takes you down your structure, then a remodel might be needed.
Exactly right.
That's well said. Well, and that's, let me say this. Anything that you need in order to be okay, that's the definition of an addiction.
Yeah.
And an addiction is the definition of captivity. So if Jesus said that what he wants for you is freedom, that means that there's no place you have to be in order to be okay. There's nothing you have to do to be okay. There's not some stimulus required in order for you to be okay. So sometimes the ground shaking is social anxiety, learning to be okay around people. Mm-hmm. When you're so, like my daughter, the other day we had to come home from the team roping, and her and little Remy were playing, and I had work to do, and I was like, we got to go. And she's just like almost on the verge of tears, and she's like, why? I go, we got to go home. She's like, what are we going to do? I'm like, well, nothing. You're not going to do anything. She's like, so I have to leave my friends and go home and do nothing? And I'm like, yep. And I felt so hypocritical, because I'm like, I deeply get that. Yeah. I want so badly when I'm around people. This job has turned me into an introvert, I think, but I'm an extrovert. I like being around people. I like where things are happening. I have to get to a place in this remodel where if I'm alone, that's okay. There's a time that I can benefit from my alone time. I can't write a sermon if I've been around people all week.
Right.
I can maybe for 1 week. Like I might be able to skip and kind of skimp and get by 1 week. By the second week, everybody's going to know it. By the third week, they're going to be like, what's going on?
Right.
I've got to have, but that's that remodel, because when I was 17, 18 years old, I didn't want to be by myself. I was so not okay being alone, because I was so aware that my life had so much progress that was needed.
And I think I fell into that category because even now, I mean, it's very difficult. I have to force it to just have nothing going on.
Yeah.
No videos, no music, no people around, nothing, just to sit there. And that literally is the definition of what I feel like my remodel was because I was just sitting at home doing nothing.
Which would have been the definition of hell 6 years ago.
Because I mean, but then seeing all my friends, freshmen in college, just doing all this cool stuff, and I mean, it was like, what am I doing? And it forced me to be like, you just gotta trust, and so work hard every day and have confidence that I'm doing, my part.
Do you feel like, and I want to get back to Adrian's question in just a second, but
yeah,
I always feel like, fear of missing out. The first time I ever heard what FOMO was, I was like, oh my gosh, there's a word for it. I feel like I've had that. I feel like that's okay. So I'm not alone. It sounds crazy, but like that other people experience, like if I'm sitting still, then something's going to happen and I'm going to miss out on it. And I have to be home and I feel like it's prison. But I think the fear of missing out sometimes is the remodel, that God is never going to allow you to miss something that you need to see or be a part of.
Confidence.
There's the remodel in my thinking, is like, no matter what I'm doing, I'm never forgotten about. Mm-hmm. I know that sounds weird. I want to get to all these questions. We got more coming, but I felt growing up like if I wasn't inserting myself into every situation and being around, that I was going to be forgotten about. And I tell you where it came from. I had knee surgery, and all my friends were kind of from the rodeo deal, and I was homeschooled, and I had knee surgery, and I was gone. I was just gone. I didn't rope for like 8 months, and my phone quit ringing.
Yeah, people forgot.
I swear people forgot about me. As crazy as that sounds, and I didn't feel like it was intentional or personal, but like it hurt so much to feel like, hey, if I'm not paddling, I'm going to sink. It's that same feeling of being in the water, and if I'm not paddling, I'm going to sink. And I think God is what catches you in that moment of surrender of, I can't keep up the struggle. Yeah. Adrian, you said, would you explain what you said about James in the sermon about death before death, experience and scripture reference? The concept of following Christ is in large part about death. Okay. Acceptance of death, like as part of what's going to happen, but also avoiding unnecessary death. I mean, look how much of the Bible is dedicated to like not causing death and not killing each other. And
Right.
I heard such an interesting thing, and it'll probably be in a sermon soon, but the eye for an eye rule that everybody references, the reason that is the powerful people, if you did something wrong to them, they would so over exaggerate it in retaliation. Like if you came and you killed one of their people, they would kill 100 of yours.
Oh my God.
And then you'd kill 1,000 of theirs. And God's like, whoa, 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 there's got to be some sort of fair justice there.
Right.
But anyway, but death, the acceptance of death, meaning I've already accepted that my life will end. That's probably what Adam and Eve went through in the garden, was the reality of a death that was coming. And no other animal has that. There's no other animal that is consciously aware of its own death. It's just living that day.
Right.
So when they eat the apple, or not the apple, the fruit or whatever, they become aware of their death. So throughout the Bible, what you see is this acceptance of death early on. I'm going to die. I know I'm going to die. This is part of the curse.
Wow.
I know it's a curse that I know I'm going to die. Knowing that I'm going to die will undoubtedly change the way that I live.
Okay.
There is no way around it. Because I know that I'm going to die, that will affect the way that I live. And what Jesus is saying is, go ahead and accept it. That's what baptism is. Done. It's already over. I know I'm going to die. Well, but I'm not dead yet. See, now that's bonus. Now you're living in the bonus.
Okay.
And so when James experiences physical death, I would have thought if it was one of the disciples, and they mention it in like 3 verses there, it doesn't talk about him being carried out or the burial.
Oh, right. Yeah.
James, it opens, it says, and James was put to death, and that sucked, but it was like, that was one of the disciples. That's like a huge
guy.
deal.
Yeah.
But the ground shakes, and what the Bible is indicating is, it was a physical death, but it was a physical death that he had accepted years before.
Right.
When Jesus said, take up your cross and follow me, when he tells James, take up your cross and follow me, he says, accept the death now and then live between now and the actual death in the bonus.
Does it say, I don't know this, so this is a genuine question. Does it say take up your cross daily, or was that somebody else's manipulation of the verse?
There's a verse in there that talks, Paul says, I die daily.
Maybe that was it.
You know, Paul says, I wake up and I'm dead. I'm already dead. Right. Well, what would happen if you had already physically died? Think of this. If you had already physically died, but you wake up tomorrow and people are like, Jacob, you died the other day. Like physically died. You're like, I know, I don't know why I'm still here. Well, I guess I'll just make the most of it until whatever happens next. Yeah. Instead of, oh, I can't do that. The concern. And so the remodel, going back to the remodel, you kind of kill a structure and rebuild it as something different.
Right.
So when it references James, it's an internal promotion, even though externally, and that's what you see in Herod. That's a good question, Adrian. I feel like I should have probably clarified that better. You see in Herod is externally everything was perfect. That guy didn't want death. That was the ultimate avoidable scenario because he was winning the game. James is like, I'm not winning or losing. I'm already dead. Death changes everything. There's a story about Lazarus. There's a poem. I ought to go look it up some point, but it talks about death threatening people, and Lazarus laughs, and he's like, what are you going to do to me? I already died. I'm already dead. You can't, there's no fear of that. So Herod is the demonstration of whitewashed tombs. It said that Tyre and Sidon, the interesting history about that was God had told him to take over Tyre and Sidon, but it had been difficult because the cities, Tyre and Sidon, were both really fortified, and it was hard, so they gave up. They quit. So when Tyre and Sidon come back now and they're asking Herod for peace, this is like, it's a big victory, and it's all that the trappings of the world had to offer as far as redecorating. It turns out that was kind of a meaningful part of the sermon yesterday. I got a lot of feedback on that, as young men saving their fathers from a pit. Like this psychological study that says young men have this innate sense of wanting to rescue their fathers. I want to solve the problem that you couldn't solve, and I want to be the hero of the family that takes the course and the direction of our family and changes it and proves it. My kids are going to want to do that. My kids see my blind spots, and I don't. My kids are 12 and 9, and they see my blind spots. And so you look at what Herod was doing. It's all the decoration, all the exterior, and it says that he struck Peter, the angel struck Peter, and it says that God struck Herod. But when the ground shook, what you saw was the rotting that had taken place. Literally, the worms. He had a parasite that had destroyed him from the inside out, and in that moment, he fell down. They suggest it took about 5 days for him to die. But James physically dies to open the chapter, and it doesn't even seem like it's that big of a deal.
Right.
It's just like, yeah.
Because it isn't, in the sense of he knows where he's going, and it's like your time's done.
Well, and I hope, should I die, should I die? I hope that people would capture that. I hope they'd miss me. I mean,
Yeah.
you hope you'd be missed,
Yeah.
but I hope that they would get that of like, this isn't a huge thing.
Right.
He spent his whole life telling us, leaving, well, here's what I hope is this kind of stuff. I'm leaving what I believe so that the next generation doesn't lose it and doesn't forget it. And there's a head start that they've got that I didn't have.
Right.
But death is not the end. Death is something like internally I accepted when I said yes to follow Jesus.
Right.
When can people realize they need a remodel versus redecorating? Hold on, I missed one. Yep, still maybe if we have trouble giving up our identity and other things, we stay tied to the tree. Yeah, I think to some degree God is so patient. And that's what's so frustrating about God is you can't outwait him.
Yeah.
Where's he going to go? If you're like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to hold on to that. We'll just see where it goes.
He's not going to get bored of waiting. And then
God's
move
like,
on.
yeah.
I've got forever.
When can people realize they need a remodel versus redecorating? Well, and I don't want to get into like that decorating is a bad thing. Like my wife wears makeup. If they get their hairs. My daughter loves wearing fake nails. Like I don't want to make it this thing of like the old Pentecostal like religion. It's not that. But I think it's a deep revelation to think of yourself as a creation with a relationship to the creator.
Right.
Because the depth of reverence in that.
Yeah.
Instead of God being, because I think sometimes people put God on as decoration. I go to this church. I shared this sermon. And this is what's so frustrating to me is that you'll see people that share like the fashionable preacher, whoever's like big in the moment. And they're like, oh, I follow this guy. Well, I go to this church. Well, I love this worship. Well, it's all decoration. And yet you see that the fruit, we're kind of tipping our toe into judgmental, but the fruit of someone's life, the smell, it's like I said, I'll never forget the smell of that barn that was rotted on the inside. It kind of looked good from the outside. You get on the inside and you're like, ugh, it just smelled bad. And I think that's probably to answer your question, Keto, is sometimes spiritually, it's just like I catch it myself. Sometimes like I just feel like I feel like I smell bad.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I feel like I'm just in a bad mood. I'm not being very nice. Maybe I'm not being very kind. I don't feel like that I'm like attracting people to Jesus. I feel like people could get to Jesus, but they have to overcome their lack of.
And recognizing that can save you. What was it you said? Unnecessary suffering.
Yeah, it's like the major pursuit of humanity to avoid unnecessary suffering. We're aware it's huge. I'm telling you what, you start digging into that, it's a rabbit hole because we know that there's going to be suffering.
Right.
But if we can avoid unnecessary suffering, that's a pursuit worth pursuing.
Right.
And then you start to think about how much of your life is dedicated. Have you ever been just like rage angry at somebody who is being reckless? Somebody's not paying attention. Maybe they're driving.
Oh,
get
yes.
too close.
Okay.
The reason it's instant rage is like that's suffering that can be avoided if you would pay attention.
Yep.
Like someone almost suffered unnecessarily, and it's wired into us to avoid unnecessary suffering.
Well, because and being in tune with yourself and your spirit. So when just like you said, you feel like spiritually wrong, and something's weird, and you're being mean to people, and blah 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 blah. Noticing that and saying, "Hold on, what do I need to do? What am I feeling?" Because it can save you unnecessary suffering. Because from the huge remodel of rat poop in the walls sky high, instead it's like there's a rat in here, and if you don't take care of this, it's gonna get bad.
You're married. TD Jake said something, and see if you've experienced this yet. He said a lot of times a couple will fight because a wife's intuition is so strong. They've got such good intuition. You're defending what you said. I didn't say that. I'm saying this. But what they're addressing is your heart. And you can say it any way that you want, but your wife picks up on where your heart's at. And the argument is, I didn't say that. And she's like, you didn't have to. I know what you mean. And I know that can get a little dicey too, but there are times where I know that what my wife is trying to indicate is not a communication battle where I can out-communicate or out-wordsmith. What she's trying to say is like, there's a smell here that even though you're saying the right things, there's a smell here that's causing damage. Could we address that? And that's the problem with thoughts. I can't prove what I'm thinking. You don't know what I'm thinking. And she's like, I can, kind of.
Right.
She can, not anybody else. I mean.
Right. What were you going to say, Levi?
I mean, I don't really know how to phase it. Whoa, it's kind of a speech chamber.
Yeah. Yeah, you're
So,
gonna have to
like-
take off those headphones to make it work.
Do you think as people we have a unique ability to recognize that dirtiness in people? You know what I mean? Like, do you ever like have a conversation with someone and on the surface they're like rad, right? But then you kind of see some of the layers of their personalities peel back. You can kind of sense that they need that remodel aspect. Like they're not really being themselves.
Right.
That makes sense.
The danger with that, because yes, I think you do. But that's why, like, I always try to reverse that and go, okay, I don't have any control over that person's life.
Exactly.
But if that was reversed, do I have the people in my life that feel confident to speak to me when they see it? When they
That's
see
what
some-
I'm trying to say.
You know,
Yeah.
I've said this before, and it really is true, whether I'm supposed to say it or not. This is true. What I'm going to say is true, and I don't know if I'm supposed to say it or not. There. So if you feel like I shouldn't have said it, I already said that. My first impression of people is almost never wrong. Almost never. What do I do with that? I should love them. I should love them as though my impression doesn't matter.
Yep.
So, and I would hope somebody gives me that grace. I feel like sometimes I don't get that from people.
Because we all have bad days where we're, you know.
Well, I don't mean that, because Jason Graham at a glance is really, really prickly on the outside. You know, he's big and scary, and he's tattooed, and he's kind of gruff, and he doesn't speak in full sentences when you talk to him in public. You're like, yeah, whatever. But you get it. Even if he's having a bad day, you get Jason, you're like, I know. But it's not even based on a day. I think that if we're not careful, and I don't know if that's a gift or a curse, but I feel like there are people that are just deeply intuitive about someone's nature. That could turn into a rabbit hole. I just mean this. I just mean that I hope that I have people that see my blind spots and also feel comfortable speaking to me about them. Could it be when a boat without the oars, is that when the remodeling starts, it isn't working? Yes, and I think the remodel starts when you just get so desperate that it isn't working that you're finally willing to do anything.
Right.
Because in my life, I have a certain amount of tolerance for some swaying, but there does come points where I'm like, I cannot
Handle
live like
this,
this
yeah.
anymore.
So another question.
Sorry, I
Like-
turned on your mic.
If you love, there's someone in your life that you genuinely love and you care about. And it's the same kind of deal. You can't control their life. They're their own human. But you see them running their life into the ground. How do you love them in a way that supports them, but also how do you confront them in a loving way about, I don't know how to phrase that
I
question
think about
right.
this, like I'm preparing now because my kids are 12 and 9. And I know your situation is different to my situation or whatever, but as a parent, I'm trying to prepare now for when my kids have the authority to run their own lives and they're doing things I don't agree with.
Yeah.
What role do I intend to play in that? Because confrontation or like bringing it up runs the risk of driving a wedge in the relationship. To some degree, I think, like I heard a guy say one time that if you really focus on reaching the people that God has brought into you, because sometimes you know that you don't have a voice in their life, but it matters to you so much. You just feel like I have to ignore everything that I know to be true and try, and then it just ruins your relationship. And you're like, well, dang it, but I tried. I think it's okay to listen to that and be like, am I being given a voice into this person's life or not? And the maturity to go, if I'm not, like as a parent, if my kids aren't coming to me asking, I have to be prepared at a certain age. I mean, they're at this age, it's my responsibility.
Totally.
But there does come a point where I have to go like, are you asking me? Or are you telling me what you're thinking? Because I want to respect your process. But that is unimaginably hard to somebody that you love and care about deeply, making choices that are going to create what? Unnecessary suffering. And you see the suffering that's going to be produced by that. And
But
to
it's
know that it's
necessary.
avoidable, that it's avoidable and have to just love them through that. But that's,
It's
I mean,
necessary
well,
to the remodel process.
well, and look what
you know?
Jesus
Yeah.
does. I mean, very seldom do comfortable people go, you know what? I need a remodel.
Yeah.
It's almost always the end of your rope. I think remodels happen in moments of desperation.
Yeah, I've found that it goes back to kind of, okay, like who we said we enjoy working with. I enjoy working with people that want to work at the job we're doing.
Right.
It's hard when it's just they're just kind of there and they're complaining and they don't really want to do it and blah, 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 blah. Because then it's like, I don't know what to do here, man. I need you to have buy-in.
Yeah.
So it's like the same thing of you know, you can tell somebody like, this is what we're doing and we're doing this and we're going to, you know, remodel you. But if they don't want to, if they're not at the end of the rope, like I have to now,
Right.
it's not going to sit. It's not going to go. It's not going to work.
Horse people, back me up on this. See if I'm right. There's something deeply satisfying about a horse that just won't stand still. You tie them up and they're pacing and pacing and pacing. You're like, you need to learn to just accept it. You need to learn mindset. Like, if this is your job, learn to love it. Horse people, back me up. There's something deeply satisfying about looking out and seeing them still pacing and they're just wringing in sweat and they're tired and you're like, it's working. Yeah. You're going to get sick of it. You know it's going to lead them to a place of surrender. They're like, I can't keep up this level of energy. At some point, sitting still, as much as I don't want to do that, sitting still is going to be the better option than killing myself. And this is God. I mean, God doesn't have to put effort into helping. I mean, this is like, it's effortless for him to watch us be in a job. I hate this job. What if he had us tied to the complaint fence and said, you're going to stay tied here till you can learn to not complain. Every time they're complain. And God's like, I got all day.
Keep going.
I got all day.
I got
how miserable you want to be.
Right.
I hate this job. How miserable do you want to be? How much buy-in is necessary? Because the exact same job and the exact same person can go through the exact same experience and be unhappy about it, learn how to think and be happy about it, and nothing changes except the way that they think.
Well, and I've in my life, when I come to a problem, it is crazy how fast my brain moves through basically everyone I've ever met and think of who can help me solve this problem. So thinking about a car, or right now I'm trying to figure out fiber optic wire and stuff. And I'm just like, you know, the Rolodex is just scrolling to who can help me with this, because I don't know I don't know what to Google. So who can help me start?
Right.
So to be that person in their lives, a person that is just like you've said, you know those people that are just overwhelmingly at peace.
Yeah.
And you're just like, how are you so peaceful?
Right.
But as soon as you're hitting a brick wall and you're like, what is going on? I need to do this. Their Rolodex is going to start rolling, and then a name's going to come up of like, that guy, I don't know what it is, but for some reason they've got something figured out.
Yeah.
And so it's almost better to maybe not talk about it and just be, you know what?
Yes.
I'm just going to be a loving, peaceful person around that person.
I love that comment. Jody said, unsolicited advice is often received as criticism.
Yep.
It is such a discipline for someone to be just sort of airing their thoughts. It's hard. I'm not good at it. But every now and then you have somebody who's like, hey, I got an idea. And you're like, okay.
Okay.
Go ahead. All right. And they're like, I think what I'm going to do is, and they lay out their business plan, and you're like, I know that's not going to work. I know for a fact. But then at the same time, they're not really asking.
They're not asking. They're
just putting it out there. It is
so
hard. It is so hard to listen and be supportive and know that, hey, maybe that's going to be your Weatherford.
Yeah.
You're going to go through that whole process. You're going to learn how to dig, and then God's going to show you where to go with it, you know?
Man, and that is me to a T. I am so much the person that is like, I've got an idea, and then rolls it out. Like, I've thought of everything, and this is going to be incredible. And it's so crazy how people can have the best intentions, the absolute best intentions, and say, well, I don't know if this is going to work, and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, it's almost disheartening of, you didn't let me have the satisfaction of figuring that out for myself. And so now I have to be embarrassed sitting here right now. For me, it's never been like, you know what? Thank you for saving me that time. It's always kind of like, yeah, that didn't taste right. That sucks.
Right. When a friend saw me making choices that were hurting me, she handed me a book of verses. It changed my life. Helping people find the Lord seems like the only real way to remodel. I'm going to tell you the saddest thing I've learned in life. The saddest thing I've learned in life is that to an amateur, there are millions of possibilities. To an expert, there's only a couple.
Right.
That is a sad thing. because to an amateur, the world is a very optimistic, hopeful place. Everything might work. Everybody might be your friend. Everybody might come through. And you wake up with this just youthful exuberance. Yeah. And the saddest thing that I've experienced in my life is becoming what I would consider somewhat of an expert in a couple of the things that I do, and realizing more about people, more about the ministry, more about like the sadness that comes with that. And I feel like now, if I'm not careful, what'll happen is I become a wet blanket. And let me think how to say this. The opportunities that young people have are almost always related to process, not outcome. And that's where I feel like I'm emerging back into happiness again, is because for a while people would tell me their ideas. I'm like, it's not going to work. I was right. I'm usually right. Yeah. If I don't know, I'll say I don't know. But my point is, I don't know what God's going to do in that process in that person's life, so that they learn how well things can fail. And then they turn and become something completely different. But you'll be a negative old person, even at a young age, if you're constantly trying to explain to people that's going to fail versus try it.
Okay.
Have you ever heard
boomer?
Yeah, okay, boomer. Have you ever heard the term that the youth is wasted on the young? The reason that youthful exuberance happens when you're young is you've got the energy to go burn yourself up at a few things and go, man,
that's true.
Now I've learned that all of my ideas are bad. But I hope, is anybody still listening? Good. Listen to this.
Okay.
There's a beauty that's reintroduced, because everything that you see as a kid, you're like, I could do that. I could do that. I could do that. And then the sadness of going, I can't do any of these things. And then the beauty of watching other people do them, like story development.
Yeah,
story development. You watch a movie and you go, how did they develop these characters? That's incredible. You look at art and you go, I could never paint that. That's amazing. You watch somebody dunk a basketball and you're like, that's incredible. Yeah. It actually brings a beauty back into life. Really, and you're like, man, I'm going to be lucky if I have anything that I can contribute. If God gives me one thing that I can bring to the table that's valuable, I'm a lucky guy.
That's a good point.
But there's a beauty to like, oh my gosh, I couldn't do all these things. I could never write like that. I could never sing like that. I could never produce like that. I could never do that. And a young person would go, well, that's sad. Like, yeah, but I couldn't
now
enjoy,
you can appreciate it.
I couldn't appreciate it until I realized I wasn't capable of it. So it does kind of go, simple, complex, simple. And when you reemerge out of complex back into simple, it's a different kind of simple, but better.
Man, that is so true.
Sometimes people need a hand. Sometimes they need an ear. Wesley is fire tonight.
Well, and I think
Wesley's going to have to keep in mind, hey, these comments coming from Thailand, but they're still coming.
Someone needs to give him a mic first off.
Yeah.
But that just ties perfectly back into the start of the remodel process, is realizing my worth isn't found in anything I'm outwardly like I am not an expert at anything, even the things that God has gifted me to do. Right. I am not going to consider myself the best at that. My identity that I pull from is in God. You know,
the smell of humility is a sweet smell.
Yeah.
You're like an armchair quarterback that's like, I'll tell you what I would have done. That smells bad.
Yeah.
Because you're like, then do it. There's nothing worse than someone with a theory being given an opportunity. It is,
or better to watch.
It's fun to watch, but that doesn't matter. But what it does, I think what it does is it allows that same person to then come back off the field bumped and bruised and scraped and go, I'm going to now watch Patrick Mahomes with a new level of appreciation and humility.
I think it was you. Who was it who said it would be so interesting if a normal person was just near?
I think Kathleen Madigan, she's a comedian. She's the one I remember saying it, but somebody else said the Olympics should have an average person attempt everything first. Like whatever event you're about to watch, just put an average person out there and let them, like the ski jumps. Have you ever heard the story of Eddie the Eagle? Not today. Listen, great story. They made a movie about him, but let an average person try it. Like turn a guy loose in the field of 9 people in the heat, like the Olympics. It's going to be a 100-yard dash, and they all kind of look like it's the same speed.
Right.
What are we looking for?
Sorry, is the computer not charging?
So the computer is plugged in.
Try turning on. Is that power strip on?
Power strip is on, but
sure?
it's not charging.
So is
the green cord plugged in somewhere?
We're at 10%. We're good.
Well, yeah.
Okay, so like the Olympics, for instance, you got 9 guys in the sprint.
Okay.
Put a 10th guy. And
because
the crowd of guys are so fast.
Right.
They're just so fast, but they're all clumped up together. So it looks like average speed. Like I think if I tried really hard, I think I could do that.
Yeah.
He'll put a guy in there and let him just try just to compare.
Oh man, that would be so fun.
I wish.
They should just do Olympics of normal dudes.
Yeah.
Just all of them are normal.
Yeah, get like the best high school guy. So he's not like your completely out of shape guy that has an office job. Get somebody who's like a really acceptable high school version of an athlete and let him try everything. And they'd be like, this is what a pretty good attempt looks like.
I almost think it would be so funny if just the normal out of shape guy just doing the 40, the 100-yard or meter sprint. They're just like not even making it. Oh,
so the story of Eddie the Eagle is that he wanted to be in the Olympics. He's from England, and I'm going to mess some of the details up. But
Hugh Jackman? That's not with Hugh Jackman. Go ahead.
Could be actually. But he decided like, all right, I'm going to try ski jumping. And that was the only event because there was nobody competing.
Was it like
him.
the kind where they and then
you go down this giant hill
Yeah.
and they said the first time he went, he wet his pants. He was so scared.
That story is so awesome.
Such a good story. But yeah, just the average. Anyway, my point, sometimes remodeling is God coming in and establishing like, hey, you're completely insane thinking you could do all this because you don't have 1,000 options. You've only got a couple. So instead of sitting back and being paralyzed with too many options, let's find what you're good at.
Right.
Let's appreciate what you're not good at. And don't let that devastate you that you couldn't actually throw a ball over the mountains, Uncle Rico. Let's get you in a place where you can be a contributor because I don't think you can appreciate that God gave you a place to contribute unless you realize how rare areas of contribution really are. Otherwise, you're like, I don't want to do this. I could be doing anything.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And exactly goes back to who I enjoy working with. I don't want to do this. I could be doing anything. And then I'm like, then go do it. Why are you here?
What's stopping you?
Yeah.
Isn't it interesting that like nowadays, I don't know, I feel like for a while you're taught as a kid that you can do absolutely anything. And it goes back to the thing of like when you're young and an entrepreneurial mindset or whatever, you think you can do anything.
Yeah.
And so it's such a harsh reality whenever that shift is, it cripples you.
It's devastating.
Yeah, because you're like, well, I can't do everything. I don't even know what I'm good at.
Right.
So
Remodeling.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that the vice versa, the redecoration is nothing has to change. It just looks better. And how sad if you live your entire life trying to look like something without ever becoming something. The redecorating, I go to the church, I act right. God, there's that verse that says, man looks on the outward appearance, God looks on the heart. I would love to be the person that goes, God, I actually am the person who is, I want to be viewed as less than I actually am. Like the truth of my life, I want to be better than the appearance of my life, to the point that I probably overcorrect a little bit. Like my language, that's one that's kind of like it's a little bit of a protest in my life. If I don't want anybody to hold me on a pedestal. And so I'm not sure I've found my sweet spot yet. I think I still turn some people off, maybe, if I'm not careful. But I don't want them to go, Jordan is so amazing.
Right. And then you're kind of
oh my gosh,
queuing it up for disappointment.
Let me just disappoint you right off.
Right.
Let's just kill that one, disappoint it right off. Because then if you look past me and past Jacob and past Levi and Mary and all the people that are contributors at Shiloh, everybody goes into Shiloh, you go, yeah, they just look so ordinary. They just seem so common. And you're like, wait till you get inside. Jesus has been doing some stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to find out that Jesus does some cool stuff with people on the inside. And if you let him, this is the end remodel. I mean, if you catch someone halfway through, you're like, I don't want to go through that. It just looks like you tore the house up. Once you get through it, you become an example for that next person that's going through that of like, oh, you do come out the other side. Things are better. Life is better when you're flexible versus rigid. Life is better when you're broke versus rigid. I mean, that's a whole nother sermon, but the example of like, hey, accept the ordinary. You're ordinary. Everybody is ordinary. And if you accept that and allow God to bring you through that process where you're exceptionally broken,
Right.
I think that's the remodeling versus redecorating.
Yeah. Well, everybody get your last minute questions in. Is it the same series?
Yeah, we're gonna go. I think not through June. Actually, I think there's only one more week of it. And then Joe Pearson's going to be here at the end of June.
Right.
And then July, we're going to kind of pivot into like the dream thing of like, let's not be people who give up our dreams, give up our goals, give up our things. I mean, passion, the passion that comes with having purpose and a direction. And I'm not sure how long that's going to last, but it goes into thoughts again. I think that plays right into it.
Right.
Jordan, did you get my message email today? I've got to get better about checking messages. I don't look at messages or emails. I don't know how people get a hold of me.
I have to send a smoke signal.
Jacob and the crew are not ordinary. Yeah. Have you guys heroes changed much in the last number of years? Oh, good question. Yeah. I mean, you want to know? Oh gosh, no. I'm not going to go down that road. But you know they say never meet your heroes.
Yeah.
Because what you find is like they're just painfully
ordinary
in most ways.
Yeah.
I would say that my heroes. You know one that it's a new one. Somebody that I really admired, and I heard him in a podcast. I've never met him. He doesn't even know I exist. The director of Braveheart.
Yep.
Randall Wallace. That guy's personality, because he's kind of this open book, and he talks about his failures. He talks about his shortcomings.
Right.
He went through a divorce, but then he also talks about like his process, and he's got a lot of work to do on himself. But it's like he's pretty open about it. That guy, to answer your question, Wade, I wanna not emulate that. I'm not saying I want to be like that guy, but there's things about his life that I appreciate because he seems like he is at least kind of open about the remodel, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to think about that. I don't know.
Levi, who's your hero?
Man, I don't know if I've ever really thought about like who is the hero in my mind.
I don't think I've thought about that either.
Yeah.
Well, what is a hero? I think a hero.
Or
And I don't think
role
I've thought
model,
of that.
you know, or
like, what is a
mentor.
hero to me? What's that definition? And I don't know if I have something to put in that.
Well, and as visual learners, I think that's a good question, because as visual learners, we got to have somebody that does something in such a way that inspires us.
I mean, like, you know, I have people that have done things that have inspired me. You know, like
It's a
going back,
collection of
you know, that
specific
nanny
areas.
that took photos just because she wanted to, and then after she died, they checked her attic, and it was like she became worldwide known photographer. You know, it's stuff like that where it's like people that have done things purely because they enjoyed them.
Yeah.
Or they felt called to them or something, you know, and they didn't do it for praise or credit or anything. They just did it because they wanted to. That stuff.
There's the same thing in like music. Like there's thousands of artists I would say I look up to.
Right.
But I don't think there's one.
Yeah, but that's a good thought. I'm
one
gonna
thing
But I
or
think the
person.
shape of a hero, let's say it this way. Maybe this is the answer. Randall Wallace for sure falls into this. It's not a person that I want to copy.
Yeah, no, that's a
I
good
think there's a
point.
range of
The
character or integrity or values that I look at.
Right.
And it's represented in a lot of faces.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But yeah, I mean that's maybe because
Yeah, because it's like you don't, you know, they're painfully ordinary. So things you look up to, are, you know, attributes of a person.
Yeah.
But not like them in general, because then they, you know, they can become somebody you try to copy, and then you're not you know, versus they can be influences.
So that to me feels like we're taking a while to answer this question, but that to me has been my concern, is that I'll read the tea leaves of life, and I know that's a witchcraft thing. I just mean like you predict and you get it wrong. You predict and you get it wrong. That's like my fear in life, is I'll always be somebody who predicts and gets it wrong. That's always been kind of my fear.
Right.
I really admire people who go, this is what I believe, and I can't get it wrong because I'm going to go towards what I believe to be right. And I really admire people like that, people who have gone for what they believe to be right, and the results come and go. But if you'll watch, more often than not, they end up in the right spot. And you're like, how'd you know? And they're like, I didn't know, but I didn't have to.
I just believed it.
Yeah.
Me waiting for the laptop to die, Mary. Well, thank you everyone for joining. Thank you for commenting.
We are almost done. If you look in the background, can you see it? Yeah. If you look in the background, the studio's getting almost done. And one of the things you can be looking for is that we've got sort of a different sort of atmosphere on some of the other podcasts that we're going to be doing. Monday nights will stay the same.
Monday nights will be the same, but we're just going to have fun with it. Do some other stuff. One question for you, Jordan, and everybody around. What kind of stuff should we put on those shelves?
Rainbows.
Decoration
90s
stuff.
action figures.
90 action figures. That's a good indication of
Not
what
90 action figures. 90s.
90 of them.
90.
Just 90.
I was like, it's a good shelf. I think it'll fit 90.
I mean, I feel
Sturdy.
like there's one little thing that will definitely make the cut.
Oh yeah.
You know what it feels like? It feels like that we have stepped ahead of our today with this studio. Like, it would be really easy to be like, why is there a studio? You guys haven't even
Right. Done anything yet.
And at the same time, to me, it feels like we know this is that of like, I know what I believe about the role that these play. I know what I believe about the communication that we've been called to.
Super special. Just like knowing the purpose of what this building is. Even whenever me and Jacob are working on something, it's like it is so
surrendering the outcome.
Yeah.
Believing in the process. And so if you're one of those people who are like, you guys have 34 people watching. What are you doing?
What are you doing? Why are you building a rock?
Watch and see that God's going to use these kinds of things right here.
Literally.
So,
Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. Tune in next week. We're doing it again.
Every Monday night, 7:00.
Every Monday night.
Write down questions, the sermon stuff, whatever you got coming in the sermon. Like, write down your questions.
Yes.
And Monday night,
Yeah,
circle
write
back.
down. Yeah, action.
People are already starting to log off. They feel us winding down. Okay, now listen. Here's what the podcast is actually about.
No, they're Billy. All right. Thank you guys for watching. Talk to you later. Bye for now.